Welcome to our first mPower participant webinar. On behalf of myself, Stephen Friend, Andrew Twister, Ray Dorsey, and the entire team, warm greetings. We're really excited to finally hold this beginning of a dialogue with all of you. So you might be asking, what are we going to do today? Well, there are three parts to this broadcast. The first, we're going to give you an overview of the app mPower and what we've been learning, where we'll give you some clues and some insights. Then we're going to turn to a review of where the project is headed, where we will talk about how we are planning to move this or that forward. And then the last part of the broadcast is going to be a dialogue. It's going to have a chance to ask questions and a sort of frame where things can go. Let me first turn to the team and introduce the team. The leads, as I just mentioned, myself, Ray Dorsey, and Andrew Twister, have been lucky to have a number of advisors that have helped. But most importantly, the app as it has been moving forward has come about because of yourselves, because of all of you as participants. As you may know, this past spring, on March 9th, Jeff Williams at Apple introduced a new theme of performing research studies that were termed research kits. It is thanks to his vision and the dedication of the team at Apple that we are able to go over the project as we are today. Let's turn to the mPower app and the rationale for building it out. There's a stark dichotomy between two things that have been moving forward. One, the existing health apps. There are, as you know, tens of thousands of these health apps, and they're built primarily to inform the user, some element of self-gratification. At the same time, there have been for decades clinical trials, we'll call them current clinical trials, that are expensive, periodic, often have small number of participants. And so we have this sort of dichotomy between large numbers of people who are somehow generating data and the expensive clinical trials, which really have existed in a separate realm. So at the heart of what we've been interested in doing is to figure out, can there be a way where there's an engaging app allowing participants to track the data, but then to build out a bridge, to build out a way where it is possible for that data to flow from many participants. In particular, you can see ways where questions and results could come back to study participants. And similarly, another communication link where study participants are able to give answers and discussions. Throughout all of this, the concept has been, why not have more symmetry? Why not have more equality between the study participants, the study researchers, where they're really treated each as partners? Because what we'd really like to get to is three things. We'd like to get to some way for Parkinson disease, for other diseases, to have objective assessments of symptoms instead of just following various elements of symptoms as part of the syndrome. Secondly, it would be great if eventually we can identify windows of interventions, something that one person does or a set of people do that when they do that makes their disease either better or worse. And thirdly, and most importantly, a way for patients to actually track their disease, what's happening in some objective way. The work that we have been doing on mPower has, as they say, been built off the shoulders of giants. Over decades, primarily the pioneering work at Kinetics and at Intel, driven by the passion of Andy Grove, the group there, Ken Kubota, Rick Bentley, the whole QMAT strategy that then was picked up by a number of others, including Max Little, Suchi Saria, Ray Dorsey, and a lot of projects going on around the world in accelerometry gave a number of the component pieces that allowed us to put something together that could function as an app to do these things. Whenever you start out on a quest or on a task, there's a phase which you call version 1. And I think people recognize from this photo, there's a lot that's sitting in that photo that eventually comes about. And the reason I point that out is for all of you who've been generating data, who've been downloading things, who've been trying to figure out what's going on, who've been working, I want to thank each of you for all of your efforts to actually get this to version 1. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Trister, senior physician here, to tell you a little more about what's going on.
Good morning. So thank you, Stephen, and thank you all for joining us this morning. This part of the presentation, I'll be presenting how some of the data that you've been contributing have been analyzed and give you a better sense of the community that has been built around mPower. In the first 9 months of the study, we have seen over 15,000 participants enroll. And of those who responded to the enrollment survey, we found that 1 in 6 has Parkinson's disease. Over 3 out of the 4 people enrolling also chose to share their data more broadly, which is a real testament to this community. In that same vein, we have seen participants join from all 50 states and 3 US territories, giving this study one with a tremendous reach, particularly for those who may not have a research hospital close to them. From the responses to the enrollment survey, we see over 1,700 people who have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease participating in mPower. 2 out of 3 of them are men, and interestingly, 90% report taking Parkinson's disease medicines. On the flip side, 9,000 participants reported not having Parkinson's. 4 out of 5 of those that we call controls are men. And beyond just looking at the geographic reach, we found that over 90% of you reported that this is the first time you're participating in a research trial. Thank you all for your participation. You're really helping to make a difference. And we hope that this is an experience that you will repeat again in future studies. So what do we anticipate showing the power of this app? Well, if you have Parkinson's disease, we estimate that you might see your doctor every 3 months or so, which would result in 4 visits a year, represented here in the red dots. But in those chronic illnesses, you may have symptoms that you live with every day, not just on those 4 days that you see a doctor, and those symptoms might be changing. So in the 285 days since we've launched mPower, there are some Parkinson's patients enrolled in this study who have provided information about their symptoms every single day, giving a much richer view into how those symptoms might be changing. So how do we collect those symptoms? Well, you may recall that there are 4 distinct activities within the app, as well as surveys that pop up every month that go into the domains of speed to tapping, walking in balance, turning, voice, and memory. I'd like to highlight the fact that the memory activity was designed by Kate Poseen and Joel Kramer at UCSF, and we thank them for donating it for this study. Using those 4 streams of data, our scientific team has been looking at 3 main questions. Is there a difference that we can see between people with and without Parkinson's in the study? For those with Parkinson's, do we see effects of medications? And can the responses that people give to what is happening in their lives give deeper insights into the daily changes that are occurring? For the first question, using information from the tapping, walking, and balance and voice tests, we can compare the groups of people with and without Parkinson's and find that there are significant differences between the 2 groups at about an 80% accuracy in our algorithms. For those with Parkinson's who have performed activities on and off medications, we started to measure changes due to medications. This example shows 6 months worth of data from a 55-year-old woman who performed the tapping activity twice a day most days. Here, the arrowheads represent the time on medications. The base of the arrows represent times off medications. You can see that on most days, there is an increase in the number of taps that she can perform. However, on some days, particularly in the middle of this 6-month period, there are some days where her tapping number actually went down. This is the sort of variability that we think could lead to greater insights into what's going on with Parkinson's disease on an individual basis. We also have done the same for data coming from the walking and balance task, as well as from the voice. And we're just in the process of understanding the effects on memory, controlling for age across participants. I must say we were absolutely blown away by the types of responses that we had to this simple question about what has made you feel better or worse in the last day. I want to share with you now some of the randomly selected samples of what people had said made them feel better. As expected, some people recommended that medications made them feel better, as did practicing meditation. Some people reported doing things like computer games or just going outside or laying down helped them feel better. Completing a list of tasks for daily activities, we hope that that related to doing some of the activities on the app. And conversely, looking at those things that made people feel worse, some of this may resonate with those in the study that have Parkinson's. So not getting a good night's sleep or worrying about getting things done around the house. But very impactfully, I highlight this particular response, that I don't think anyone in my family really understands what Parkinson's disease is and how it is impacting my life and my work. This communication that we found early on in the study goes to the very heart of why we believe that this sort of participant-centered research can help everybody understand more about the impacts of this disease. So those were just a sampling, but we got over 22,000 responses that we have been going through. So thank you all for your continued contributions in this effort. To highlight how we've been approaching these questions, we've been using some sophisticated language processing algorithms, and we have found a number of themes that I'll share with you now. So the top 4 areas that people describe making them feel better relate to exercise, walking, getting good night's rest, and work. While pain and a lack of sleep, as well as depressed mood, make people feel worse. These are not particularly surprising results, but they give insights into the next steps that we would like to take in the study and ultimately finding ways to help you understand your disease better. So how do we transition from this version 1 to something that really flies?
To do that, let's go to 4 areas that we're working on actively. One has to do with improvements to the app. That is, what are the next changes we're going to be making? Secondly, let's talk about building out the mPower community and the steps we're doing to help this grow. Thirdly, building a learning community that's engaged. It's a broader community with academics and foundations. And eventually, the concept of preparing ways to find measures to help you and your physician. In terms of what we need to do to fix or to improve the app, I want to note that there are more than 10,000, more than in fact 12,000 responses. Again, plenty to help us. Here they're rank ordered from the things that were most frequently noted: tapping, directions being unclear, imagine that, walking, the tapping, friction, all the way up to surveys and voice and added features. And because of that, we've gone ahead and used those to drive the next changes to mPower. For the spring, there are going to be a set of new instructions, hopefully those will work a little better. We're working on redesigning the medication tracking in a series of transitions. And also, the first version didn't have an assessment of tremor, and you'll note a new tremor assessment that will be there. As those come out, it may be such that people who initially were interested in the app may find it worth getting back on and trying. So I want you to have a rough sense of the time frame in which those new changes are going to come about. At the same time, starting with this broadcast, we're interested in having a more interconnected community around mPower. To a certain extent, that can be done by forums, it can be done by newsletters, it can be done by webinars. I want to pause here and extend an invitation. There are groups who, for decades, have already been building out existing Parkinson communities. There are groups that are organized in social media. I think the biggest mistake we could make is to assume that some new community in isolation needs to be built out. So I hope if you are aware of groups that might find incorporating in some of these components into their own communities, into their own forums, that would help. And we'll work on the newsletters, we'll work on the webinars. Beyond just the mPower community itself, the other really important thing we want to get across is there is a growing set of researchers who are working on this particular project. There are the participants themselves, but for this to work, for it actually to turn into what it needs to, we're going to need to have the engagement of those groups who are specialists in clinics, who are running movement disorder clinics, foundations who have, again, been not just organizing patients, but have ways of connecting those who might benefit from the app and the physicians, along with medical institutions. So this slide is meant to represent, in 2016, the chance to begin to tap into, to connect into groups in order to get the most information to improve the app the most. You may know Sage Bionetworks is a nonprofit organization up here in Seattle, and we've focused on participant-centered studies. Here's the team that's been working on the app, a little bit about the mission that we're on. The reason I bring this up is we think that there is an opportunity beyond just generating the data that sits now to be able to be rolled out in the next year. And that is the following. The data that was generated, 78% of the participants said they would like to have that chosen to be shared broadly. And we have technology, we have a platform called Synapse that allows that data to be hosted, and it allows qualified researchers worldwide to get on to use it. And so as the data is growing, as the insights are beginning to come out, in this next phase, beyond improvements to the app, beyond improvements to the community, we're hoping that individuals will start coming and accessing the data that has been generated. We are in January going to launch a way where all the data that's allowed to be shared broadly will be hosted. All of that data will be hosted in a way where people can use the data, they can share the insights, they can form communities. We're working with a number of groups that have been building data on accelerometry data to see if there are clusters of groups who might begin to work together. And so at the heart of this is promoting an ecosystem where research is conducted for others to consume. So I think what we've started with version 1 of the app, as it evolves, is going to give us a chance to go beyond that and to eventually get to where, over time, that knowledge will be able to develop measures to help you, to help your physician. I hope you've found this broadcast helpful. This will be made available afterwards, so you can review it, you can share it with others. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Trister and look at some of the questions or see if there are any things that might begin this dialogue from the Q&A session.
Thank you again, Stephen, and thank you all for sending some excellent questions. We might add that we've chosen to use this YouTube broadcast as the forum simply to maintain anonymity, and we thank the leaders at the Western IRB, which is the IRB of record for this study, for this recommendation. So I will begin by taking a number of questions that were emailed in. The first one, which is very poignant and related to what Stephen was just talking to, is what is the prospect for participants to access their own data? In this respect, I would say that we already have ways that people can download their data directly. We're making those available in the next version of the app, which should be in the App Store soon. However, the way that people see this data is quite messy. So it basically comes down as very large files of text. We are working actively to build a dashboard, if you will, where one could log in to a website and start to manipulate their data for their own analysis. We totally understand that many of you in the study likely are capable and able to already deal with the data themselves, which is why we're beginning with this first big data dump, in some respects. But we think that having an ability for people to see their own information in a longer period of time than the 1 week, which is currently in the app, would be very valuable for them, just as it was for us when we were doing the analysis. Another question, which relates to the functioning of the app, is that the app sometimes fails to save, especially voice and tap data. And we appreciate this response, or this question, because I must say that it has been an interesting endeavor for us to put live this type of study. And our engineering team has been very active in fixing these sorts of bugs. We have found that in general, the capacity of the app to, or our ability to improve the app has been hindered, but right now we're at a very good state. So you should start seeing pretty frequent updates to things like that. And we invite you all to write pdapp@sagebase.org with these types of issues so that our engineering team can track what's been happening. Another question, which is also related to the data, was if we could give a sense of what a healthy gait from a Parkinson's perspective would look like as we're measuring it. Unfortunately for this question, I must say we don't have an idea of what is a healthy gait. One of the things that we are looking to do in the very near term is to begin validating the types of measures that we're doing with the accelerometers and other sensors within the phone, so that that score that is reported back to participants is much more meaningful. That validation requires people to come into a lab to be observed either by their physicians or by another clinician, and then to have recordings made using both the phone and some additional equipment which has been used in the past. So as Stephen pointed out, we have a number of, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And so the score that is currently reported was based on work done by Ray Dorsey and Max Little in a similar study on Android devices. And we understand that we can make that score more meaningful and even better with this type of validation. Related to that question, another participant asked, what are the benefits of extreme exercise regimen, such as Rocksteady boxing? This is a really, really excellent question. We are quite keen to understand, as we presented earlier, what the effects of exercise might be on symptoms and on the well-being of those with Parkinson's disease. And we're quite excited, actually, about Rocksteady boxing and some other extreme exercise regimens in their ability to have people feel good and also reduce the symptoms. That said, currently we do not have a way to track whether those people participating in mPower also participate in Rocksteady or other extreme exercise regimens, though anticipate a new survey question to just track whether people are doing that as the first step, and then we'll see if we can go from there. If there's a community interest, then we will want to build it. There is a question about the walking test. The question is, what is the walking test during the stationary 30 seconds? And this goes to the point that our instructions were completely unclear. So we are still recording for 30 seconds how much people who are doing the test are swaying. So there's an expectation that we might be able to get a sense of how steady people are, not during their walk, but just during a balance test. And so we do hope that the new instructions will make that much clearer. One last question, and that is, what is the prospect for participants to have more frequent feedback and communication about the study? It is our hope that this is the first of a number of webinars that will come forward. But as Stephen pointed out, we are looking for partners that have existing forums where people can contribute their own ideas, either anonymously or in a way that they can share their own experiences. as well as through newsletters. The feature within the app that we have added since the launch is called News Feeds, and we will begin to update that more regularly, as well as anticipating emails for those that would wish to subscribe to them, where some of the insights that are derived from the analysis, as well as opportunities to help with validation studies and participate more directly with us as we improve the app, will be coming forward. So you can look for those in the new year. With that, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in this morning. We hope that you found it an interesting way to spend a half hour with us, and we look forward to communicating with the whole community moving forward.